Welcome back.
Welcome back. A couple of years ago, was it a couple of years ago? I think it was. Oh, it was the summer of 2023 to be specific. I got a gift from my aunt. She bought it on Amazon. She got me two gifts. She got me this huge packet of jerky because she knows I love jerky, and she got me this book on creativity by John Cleese, the John Cleese from Monty Python.
Cool.
The thing about this book is that I didn't expect it. I didn't even know that John Cleese wrote a book on creativity. It just appeared on the doorstep. I opened up the package, and there it was, a book about creativity by John Cleese.
You read it right away?
It took me a while because I was already reading other stuff. I'm always reading, and I always have a list of books. If somebody gives me a book as a gift or recommends a book,
You got to fold it in.
I got to fold it. I add it to the list.
Yep.
And about a month ago, it was the book's turn, and so I started reading it. And not bad. What John Cleese says about creativity, when I got my master's, I had to study a little bit about neuroplasticity on how to think or how thinking works. As a result, most of the things that he said in the book, he wasn't really speaking in scientific terms. He wasn't really writing like a scientist. He was providing anecdotes and examples, but mainly he was explaining how creativity is beneficial. He's written it well in layman's terms that anyone can understand and get actually have fun reading it, because he does a really good job connecting his anecdotes to the points he's making about creativity. And for those of you who don't know, John Cleese he's a famous British comedian, famously known for being part of Monty Python, but he has done other projects as well. He has also written movies such as A Fish Called Wanda. If you haven't seen A Fish Called Wanda, to me, it's one of his best, with Jamie Lee Curtis and Kevin Kline and Michael Palin. He's also written the show Fawlty Towers, which it's such a funny show. It's such a good show. But nonetheless, John Cleese eventually wrote a book about the importance of creativity, how it can benefit you. And by the end of the book, he provides some advice on how to become creative, on what steps to take. And so I wanted to discuss about it today, because the way I see it, I don't think creativity is pushed enough in the world of academics. I know for a fact that creativity is a necessity for students. I think that students need to incorporate creativity, and teachers incorporate creativity in their lesson plans. It's all about the application, because even John Cleese said in his book that the focus in education was more about knowing your information and not so much on exercising your brain to be creative. Now, John Cleese refers creativity to new ways of thinking about things, that creativity is not limited to the arts, but in every area of life, science, business, sport. If you can be able to do something better than it has been done before, then you're being creative. Anyone can be creative. He explains that he was great in science, yet he also said that you cannot be creative in science without knowing an awful lot about the subject. That applies for any field of knowledge. In fact, creativity can be taught, or at the very least, you can teach someone how to engender certain circumstances which will lead you to become creative, which best supports the reason why project-based learning is a better approach for learning. You first are introduced to the facts, the concepts, the learning skills. Then you create, a week-long assignment that the student must use the information and critical thinking skills to solve or create something that demonstrates your comprehension of the content that you were taught. This can only be accomplished with the assistance of creativity.
All right. Well, first I'm going to say, was it The Day the Earth Stood Still? He was the smart professor, John Cleese.
Oh, in the remake with Keanu Reeves?
Yeah.
He was I remember what you're talking about. Yeah, he was that professor.
Yep. So that's cool. We're going to unravel it. And you got some bullet points to go over within that kind of...
Of course.
All right.
He makes some good points, and I think it's important to share the points.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to tell you exactly what it says page for page. I'm just going to mark some important initial points that John Cleese makes. If you want to know what advice he provides, I recommend that you read the book.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's a short book too. He does a good job with brevity. So he starts off by explaining that the first time that he realized he was creative was when he was in Cambridge University in the UK studying law. At the university, he met a group called the Footlights. He said that these people would hang out and have fun by putting on little shows that at their hangout place, like shows on stage and dance. In order to be a member, you had to put on a little piece, a little show or a skit. And John Cleese did that. He actually did something funny and original, and it was good enough that he got accepted into the group. And he said that was when he realized his creativity. He also pointed out that whenever he would have writer's block, usually at night, he would give in and go to bed, yet in the morning, a solution to his block would come to mind. Yes, when you are at writer's block, you should take a break. If you're in the middle of work, and let's say you're working for quite a while, and then you're at an impasse, you're at a mental impasse, and you don't know what to do, then you're at writer's block, you need to take a break.
Get a reset.
Yeah, I mean, you've had, when you were thinking of new ideas for the band, you had to take time to think out the lyrics, how to think of the tunes, how to think out how to put everything together, didn't you?
Yeah, and these bands I'm working with today and my songs today, the collabs, you always want to be shaking it out and making another go at it. And I guess you got to be open to the possibility that something is going to stand out and be just different and weird and make you feel something. And be ready for that. Like, just always know it's coming. That kind of openness,
Will you say that it prepares you, like better prepares you if you step back, take a breather, ponder a bit?
You got to catch a reset, maybe march, like, we grind a little bit in the studio, and then we go walk in the woods or go do something, and then, come and hit it hard again. And that's kind of on the daily thing, but yeah, over the long throw, you got to, I know for me, I like quitting all the business hubbub around 5 and just make sure the rest of it's like blow it out time, so that's my habit. Just a bunch of habits where you make that so you don't get all caught lopsided by just in the, without the perspective of doing other things or just flipping it up or having a day of a week that you take off, like totally take off. That helps keep that balance maybe that you're talking about.
No, it does help keep a balance. The brain needs a regime. It needs like a pattern.
Mine does. I know I need to say it's going to happen, and I know it's going to happen because the 50% on, 50% off guy all the time gets like, gosh, it's tiresome sometimes. Sometimes, you want to just,
No, you have to, because it even says that when you take breaks, you're actually strengthening the synapses that's taking place. You start connecting the dots. Well, technically your nerve cells are connecting. That creates the synapses, and that helps create a flow of information throughout the brain. As you're thinking, you are connecting nerve cells and you're passing information throughout the brain, more or less.
Yeah, if you're getting cramped up about, I got to finish it and I got to keep going, that's not balance, where all your chemistry and all your vibes are settled in a balance that makes you have a good idea, a groovy thing. Instead, you get all crampered and you got to uncramp.
Exactly. You have to uncramp. In this article that I read on ScienceDaily.com, it says when taking longer breaks, the same neurons active during the first learning phase were used later again. Reactivating the same neurons would allow the brain to strengthen the connections between these cells in each learning phase. There is no need to start from scratch and establish the contacts first. That's why we believe that memory benefits from longer breaks. Even Roald Dahl, the writer, I mentioned about him before in another episode. Roald Dahl, the guy who wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach, Matilda. In an interview, he said that he would take breaks. He would designate a certain amount of time to write, and when that time is up, even if he's on a roll, he stops and he takes a break. that helps with the creativity, because when you come back to it, I don't know, maybe a day later or 12 hours later, you have fresher, newer ideas, or you have a better way to do something. No different than when you finish a first draft, and when you write the second draft, you see, oh, I could have written this a little better. Now I'm seeing clearly. All the information's coming back, and we are reviewing. So in other words, what John Cleese said here is backed up as well.
Neat.
Another example is that he and his friend Graham Chapman, if you've seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail, he's King Arthur. And John Cleese and Graham Chapman...
Uther.
No, now you remember I'm your king. I didn't vote for you. Graham Chapman, which is, I'm talking about Cleese and Graham Chapman collaborating in the university. And when I watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail, I always love the scene between him and the Black Knight, which is played by John Cleese. The famous scene where he cuts off limb after limb of the Black Knight. He denies that he's wounded.
Flesh wound.
It's a flesh wound. 'Tis but a scratch. The fact that when I read the book on creativity and John Cleese talked about him and Graham Chapman collaborating, it always reminds me of those two creating that scene in Monty Python's The Holy Grail.
And the coconuts for the horse clopping, the sound.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which just great.
Putting it up in your face,
I mean, that right there is just comedic genius.
Great.
The fact that they didn't even have horses, it just pretended to ride to mimic the sound of the horse gallops. I'm sorry to digress. So he was talking about he and Graham Chapman collaborating on writing. They were writing sketches, and they were making fun of biblical passages and sermons.
Yeah, I love that.
Which, again,
cheesemakers.
It reminds me of, now Life of Brian.
Yeah.
That already they were making skits parodying biblical passages and sermons. And Cleese lost a sketch that they were working on. And in order to avoid Graham being cross with him, he rewrote the sketch from memory, but he actually wrote a better version of the sketch. Again, the time between having written the original sketch and up to the time that he had to rewrite it, he had this little break. And when he was rewriting the sketch, he actually wrote a better version of it. Now, Cleese also compares the idea of taking a break to digestion or reflexes. That when you are developing new ideas during your mental break, you are not consciously managing it yourself or have acute awareness of your momentary action. It is as if the body tells you to hang on, I got this. I think I know where you're going with this. That's basically what the brain's telling you.
That's a cool way to put it.
Yeah, in other words, your brain's developing new or better ideas. It's an involuntary impulse. Just by the fact that you're working on something, you take a break and you come back to it, and there's a very good chance that you're actually going to have a better idea about it. The brain goes on autopilot like an AI program saying, oh, I think I know what you're trying to do here. Let me reformulate it for you.
Yeah, and if it's real nuanced and you've been in the hot chops for a while, then what happens is like it's more flared up.
It is more flared up. And it's more flared up because you have strengthened your memory. And with that, you have allowed it to exercise, to think outside the box.
Yeah, expressing like a vitality, right?
Exactly. It is vitality for the nerve cells that are doing their job, because you're reconnecting and you are strengthening them.
And you're not in like a fight or flight. You're just totally, you're pretty safe to be skipping to Maloo with the thoughts and stuff.
But it does coincide with what we were talking about in the previous episode about the artist not being, what's the word, limited by deadlines or by objective. That it's important for the artist to let it to go with the flow, to have a devotion to their art, but at the same time, not to be burdened with, oh, I got to do it this, I have to reach this goal, not this goal, but I need to make it to this point, or I have to make myself clear on this stance. It's good to have a working base, as long as you understand you might deviate from that working base and perhaps find a different message, a better message for all the better of it. And the reason why that connects to what John Cleese said is because you cannot force your brain to think of something better automatically. A little break goes a long way.
Yes, it's not a hard angle that you're talking about. It's like curves, and it's like because like you said, it's subconscious. It's like opening the gate, not like for, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're opening the gate for
The flow.
for the flow. Exactly. You're circulating ideas and information going through the synapses.
That's a habit.
It becomes
Just keep
habit.
More of that, and that gets burnt into the. What are we gonna do? A whole bunch. That open the gate.
Well, you said that it gets burnt into it, and Cleese makes another point. While it's good to take breaks while you're working, creativity is also linked to memory. Now, he gives us an anecdote. He links the concept of creativity to memory. He brings up a study of a group of people who had to take a look at a set of Chinese characters, of Chinese writing. And on the second day, meaning after they saw the writing, after they saw the images, on the second day, they were presented with a new set of characters, including the characters that they have seen before. So they included the ones that they've seen the day before and new characters as well. And when they were asked if they recognized any of the characters from the previous session, no one was able to identify or differentiate the old from the new. They could not tell which ones were from the previous session. However, this experiment was repeated on a new group. This group was brought in. They were shown a set of Chinese characters. On the second day, instead of asking the group if they recognized any previous characters, they asked the groups to identify which characters they preferred more. And surprisingly, the characters that they liked more were the characters from the previous session.
Burned in.
They were burned in. They recognized the ones that they liked from the previous session.
Subconsciously.
Or as Cleese says, unconscious. But I would say more subconscious because they did that without knowing. It happened. It was like an automated response that their brain guided them to say.
That's cool.
It was all about familiarity and preference. But of course, think about it. Familiarity is key to memory. You have a better chance to remember the things you're passionate about, the things that have value to you, emotional or sentimental, yeah. You have a better chance of remembering the things that you prefer than the things you don't prefer. I can remember names, events in history, but I can hardly remember most of the things that I've learned in chemistry because I prefer history over chemistry. It's all about preferences. Now, can I commit things to memory? Sure. But it's better when you can find a way to keep it in your mind, the creative way to keep it in your mind.
And you get a beat going with that and it starts working. It trickles down into your brain cracks and it's just in there.
Exactly. That the unconscious, as he calls it, is not a part of your psyche that you can control. It's all motivated through stimuli. It responds to what you've experienced. It responds to what you've thought, to what you felt. In other words, you let your creativity work. You've got to go with the flow of things.
He was pondering hard, huh?
I don't know how much he pondered, but I'm sure he took breaks when he wrote it.
No, I'm saying writing this, just thinking, he's probably been thinking his whole life about all these little, angles, and it's like, make a book.
Oh, no, and without a doubt, he's done a great service creating this book, especially when it comes to understanding the importance of creativity. He's a master or appreciates the value of creativity.
Yeah.
What his book says is indeed an example of how neuroplasticity works. In fact, creativity is good for the brain cells. It basically what he says is that through creativity, your brain is stimulated, forming new connections in your brain, neural connections. It increases and it improves neuroplasticity, which is basically how your mind functions and adapts to whatever you're thinking or what you're working with. When you're spacing out, actually, I would say that when you're spacing out, I'm not saying a person should space out often, but when you're spacing out, you are letting the flow take over. You're letting ideas run through your head. It's always why I always go on walks. Whether I'm stressed out about something, I think of a way to not make such a big deal of it, or remind myself not to make a big deal of it. When I have to think of new things to write, going on walks helps me write it in my head, and it stays in my head. And just like John Cleese said, when I get back home, I actually end up writing something better than what I thought on my walks. It's all about letting the flow do its work. It's almost like hydroelectric currents in a dam. It sets off a power source, no less than when you're letting your neural connections do the work and ideas spin around and go through everything that you're contemplating about.
Which is a lot for most humans, right?
It can be a lot.
And having an outlet like that feels so great, right?
It feels so great because you experience some sort of comfort, as if you have some sort of freedom as you're thinking.
And you exercised, you fleshed it out, you let something happen. Maybe that vitality, you feel that.
That very vitality is why there should be a more encouragement of creativity in education. Now, like I said, there is creativity done by teachers. There are many teachers that make creative lessons to help the students practice their thinking skills on assignments. It can't always be notes. It can't always be answering questions. Eventually, that's what you have to do. You have to practice different problem-solving skills with different types of subjects. Types of subjects, that's redundant. Different subjects. For example, in school, you're learning literature, you're learning science, you're learning history, and you're learning mathematics. You're learning, at minimum, 4 different subjects. You also have your electives as well. But in essence, what you are really doing is practicing critical thinking in more than one way. You're practicing critical thinking with quantitative skills, mathematics.
And it doesn't always feel like that when I was in my teens. It'd be cool if I could feel that back then and sense the wonder and be open to it, but it just didn't. I didn't get that from that, and I didn't. I see now how it's a cool place to be, and
well,
yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is that when students are introduced with a topic or with fresh content,
aptitude, because some people, their aptitude and their throw of 1 out of 6 things that they're learning, they might learn regular pace on most, and then one of them is 10 years later the light goes on, they go, oh, now I get it, because that was me in math,
likewise. If math is not exactly my favorite of subjects,
but I didn't get the feeling like with the other stuff to where it felt like creative, and I got that thing, that vitality, that
when I was sorry to you,
back in the day, but I'm saying yeah.
The thing is, back in my day, when I was learning a new subject, I was never told the importance of that subject. It's as if the teachers knew that I knew, but I did not understand the importance of certain topics. For example, if I was introduced to integers,
like a utility, and you're going, okay, that's what it is.
Yeah, how's this going to be relevant in my life?
Hey, I get to talk to different people when I learn a different, language.
Exactly. You're learning a new language, but you're learning why. You have to understand why you're learning that new language. What's it to your benefit?
And then you get creative and you get the pop.
Well, with me, creativity helped me understand the purpose. For example, when I was taught integers in the 6th grade, I was told about positive and negative numbers. Okay, they're positive and they're negative numbers. And he taught us the rule. If a negative is adding to a positive, then you have to treat it like subtraction, and the bigger one is going to be the value. If you're multiplying 2 positives, it's a positive. If you're multiplying 2 negatives, it's going to be positive. If you're multiplying a negative and a positive, it's going to be negative. Same with division. When you're subtracting, add the opposite, all that. But they never told me its relevance until I had a math tutor. And a math tutor told me to see it a different way, to view integers the same way as one would view owing money, terms of money.
Right.
If he says, a simple problem, okay? -10 plus 2. He said, all right, you owe me $10, but you can give me 2. Do you still owe me money? The answer is yes, I owe you. How much? -$8. That was one way my tutor helped me understand that.
That's neat.
And Of course, you might say, well, your creative stance was figurative to compare integers to money.
So you could run it through your brain in a way it's used to processing right?
You see it in a different light, but with a better light, you are seeing it with a purpose. I saw integers as practice and paying back people money or catching up on something. That helped me understand integers better. And again, I made a comparison to understand that. But figurative language is in of itself a creative way to draw connections. It's no different for any other subject. If students know why they're learning something, what it has to do with them, then they will have a better inclination to learn it. Or maybe not even inclination, but understanding why they have to learn it. In order to understand that, that's where you introduce creativity, application. Create a scenario in which the information that you're teaching, that you explain its relevance, will help them understand. Another example, the Louisiana Purchase. Why do I have to learn about the Louisiana Purchase? Okay, well, why are you learning about it? Let's see. Okay, why do we have places like Colorado or Nebraska or Idaho, among other places in the United States? Why do we have all these places that are part of the United States? It's because of the Louisiana Purchase. But how do I get them to practice what we've learned of the content to understand it better? You create, for example, a brochure. Tell them, all right, so you guys are going to create a brochure. You need to let people know the following things about the Louisiana Purchase. By doing so, you will understand everything. All you have to do is look at the standards. You create questions that are related to the standards, what the students have to learn. And by answering the questions correctly, the students are learning the standard. At the same time, they're doing it in a creative and meaningful way. They are literally creating a brochure for people to learn about the Louisiana Purchase based on how they understood it. That right there is creativity. You've instilled a purpose, and you've also given them freedom to exercise that knowledge.
That's neat. It's like a comfy frame for them to sit in and go, okay, I can do this right here.
Exactly. They say, and the tools that I need are the information that my teacher taught, and I know that I'm still confused with the language. My teacher can help me. Independent learning is useful, but it's only useful when you're applying what they've already learned. It's better to teach whole group, to learn something whole group when you're learning new information. You learn new information on your own, but it's better you have a teacher that's showing you the ropes.
Yeah, it's great.
Imagine if you're in karate and you're learning a kata. Well, how would you learn the kata on your own if you don't have the sensei showing you? Or you're in jiu-jitsu. How are you going to learn the latest move without someone showing you?
And with all the gravity of actual presence, a memory of like, oh yeah, he was showing me how to block this deal here and all that. Just remembering the feeling and the moment and the smell of it and the sight of it and the vibe, that's way different.
It is way different. To me, you can tell it's different because you feel more comfortable with the information it's been taught to you. Note taking, it might feel tedious, but it's good. And I think even John Cleese would agree with this, that you need to have your info before you can even toy with it. You need to know how it all works. You can't exactly become a carpenter if you don't know how the machinery works or how to use the tools. The information is the tool and the material.
So creativity and a specific skill set is one thing, and then the general creativity of each individual's approach to their own life at any given time, over a week, over a day, a month. That's the everyday, the every week kind of how you do your thing kind of creativity.
Well, that's where we get to the second part.
Cool.
Because I'm glad you brought that up, T. Because Cleese actually has a chapter about that. Oh. It's called Harebrained Tortoise Mind. Now, Cleese brings up a book titled Harebrained Tortoise Mind. It's by a writer named Guy Claxton. The book differentiates two ways of thinking. The first way is the harebrained way. Now, when I mean harebrained, I mean
Like a rabbit?
like a rabbit, yes, because it's an allusion to the fable, The Tortoise and the Hare. Those of you who are thinking harebrained, no, we're not referring to the brains the size of a hair figment. No, we're referring to the fast rabbit. So if you're harebrained involves logic and problem solving, such as determining your pros and cons, creating arguments. It's harebrained because it is quick thinking guided by a purpose. This is the kind of thinking that is taught in the traditional sense in schools. Know what facts are useful, what are not. Know how to know the logic to reason with different things. Basically, direct problem solving. Then there is tortoise mind. Now, the tortoise mind, as you can tell, it's going to be slower than the harebrained. Now, just because it's slower, that doesn't mean that one who thinks slowly is at a disadvantage. On the contrary, a person who is tortoise-minded may practice a slower form of thinking, yet the directive is not clear, nor is the purpose, yet it is a more playful, open, and leisurely way of thinking. In other words, you take your time.
I don't know if this is what you're talking about or what he's talking about, but just that steady eddy ramping up a little bit each week, no matter which aspect was magnified the most. It's a general upward trend that you get to stay heated up in a general upward trend across the timeline, just as long as we're going up, it's improving, it's getting better, it's slow, it's turtle.
Exactly. You're basically taking your time. The tortoise-minded person spends time ruminating and thinking things over, taking a while to solve the problem. However, the advantage to this is that you are open to creative thinking. The daydreaming, exactly. It is a strategy to this problem solving. Claxton, according to Cleese, emphasizes that while the tortoise mind is slow and appears aimless, it is as an intelligent form of thinking as the harebrained. Now, you can be able to reach conclusions and understand information and present your way of thinking quickly. Good for you. On the other hand, you are taking a while to figure out the information and put it out there. It's still not that bad because you are technically exercising your mind. Think about it as people lifting weights. There's the one who can be able to lift weights and lift them at a certain speed, at a certain rhythm. Then there's the one who's lifting weights. They're heavy, and they're taking their time to slowly lift and lift. They might be new to it. They still need to get a hang of it, but they eventually complete the same number of reps as the other one. It just takes a while. But on the other hand, they are letting their body build.
In life, it's a little bit of both, right?
In life is a little bit of both, but it applies to the mind as well. Here's a good example that Cleese brought up. One example he brought up to substantiate the tortoise mind was a psychologist. His name was Donald McKinnon. His research on creativity took him to interview architects, specifically asking them who was the most creative of architects. He then proceeded to interview those architects, not telling them the purpose of the interview, which is to know how they work, such as their routines. He also did the same thing with creative architects. His results pointed out that the creative architects drew pleasure from their work and that they deferred making decisions for as long as they could, meaning that the architects who were given creative freedom, who were given time to formulate their ideas, were the best or were good because they were given the time to perfect their ideas. Going back, the ones who take their time, take breaks, and then come up with better conclusions one at a time, they turn out to be the most creative ones because they were respected on their time. They were respected on their latitude. And in the end, they got results because they allowed them to realize their passion at their convenience.
Because if they don't allow the artist or whatever, if the artist is disallowed from just fleshing things out, deciding on their own timeline or whatever, just making something happen like they want it to happen, if they don't feel that the joy of just what is it, having your druthers, then everything else that comes after that could be like stifled, stilted. You got to let it all out to get that flow kind of going, right?
Stifled, stilted, rush. Would you rather have the person who's rushing to make you a burger or the person who's taking their time to perfect the quality of the burger?
And then that long-term effects of those habits over like years and stuff.
Yeah.
Just the instincts.
I mean, think of Michelangelo. It took him years to sculpt the David. I think it was 4 years. I mean, you take a look at the David. I saw the David. It's amazing. It is just a near perfect piece of art. I say near because I don't think anything can be perfect. But it is a near perfect piece of art. And it took him 4 years. He took his time and he was given respect. In fact, Michelangelo was a very irascible person. He would easily be angry whenever he was pushed. You ever read the Agony and the Ecstasy?
No.
Oh, you got to read the Agony and the Ecstasy. The movie with Rex Harrison and Charlton Heston. Charlton Heston plays Michelangelo. It does a pretty good adaptation. It doesn't cover the full book, but it gets to the most important point where Pope Julius II basically obligates Michelangelo to paint the Sistine Chapel. The Pope doesn't understand how long it takes to paint a chapel. Michelangelo had a great idea. He was basically going to summarize the Bible, painting it in panels that summarize, which has been done before. The artist Giotto did that with his frescoes and churches as well. Well, Michelangelo wanted to do that with the Sistine Chapel. There have been interventions on his work, and he would get furious when there were interventions. Michelangelo did not want to be interrupted.
That's a great, case in point.
It took him time to paint that chapel, and the Pope would egg him on. The famous line, "When will you make an end? When are you going to be finished?" And Michelangelo says, "When I'm finished. Let me do my job. Stop rushing me." And Cleese drew an analogy to that of children playing. Children are rather uninhibited in their playtime, and as a result, they enjoy their playtime because there is no goal or purpose in that playtime. It's not like you tell the kids, you tell them, "All right, kids, go ahead and play. You have 10 minutes to stack those cubes symmetrically with a certain inches apart from each other." So I don't. You don't. You let them have their playtime.
Let's put a cap on the levity as well. Level 6.
You'll be surprised what kids can create when they're having fun. When you let them have their way, when they draw or when they build things out of Legos, when they create train tracks or car tracks with their toys, they have quite the imagination. Their creativity, uninhibited, can produce pretty good ideas. They are letting their brain exercise.
And then you got to be an adult and still loose it up like that. That's a trick. You got to keep the beat going.
It does. You got to keep the beat going. But it's no less with adults. I understand that in certain industries, we'd have deadlines. But I also learned in education that it's good to have realistic goals. Do not make realistic goals. You're going to rush yourself to an unrealistic goal.
The challenging yet achievable gets you the balance, right? Hopefully you get a squirt from both sides of heat, It does, because it actually comes at you from both sides, because on one hand, you're being pressured to complete something, and on the other hand, you want to do a good job, but you can't have both. And a button update is a lot of times a great thing, because then you stop with the choice fatigue and all the wandering around. You kind of draw it in, and finish. Sometimes it's probably the bigger and more complex a project, you probably need more of that, right?
Oh, yeah. When you're given a certain amount of latitude and freedom to expressively, calmly, and happily create your art, there are no reminders to adhere to the certain rules. It's all about exploring something new, just like with children. It's all about figuring out how it works and what can be done. Even when you have a passion and you create a new project, you are stumbling onto something new. And part of stumbling onto something new is exploring what can you do about it, and then how can you improve it. That takes creativity. We search for pleasures. When we search for pleasures, they're seldom seen in times when we are under burdens of deadlines and such so forth, because adults themselves are occupied with responsibilities limited to the extent of fun. Therefore, if we're limited on creative freedom, we are unable to avoid decision making. It's important to make decisions. However, when it comes to certain things, especially your passions, don't let that be burden.
And it's kind of a rheostat. I mean, it's like a light that you can fade on and off. Sometimes you got to get gooey and loose it up, and sometimes you got to slam it shut and be like, it's going to happen soon, but on a timeline. But you got to know when it's important to take the hurry up, or to be like, all right, I got to get in the zone. It's both. Like sometimes it's both, or one or the other.
Well, before you get in the zone, you need to. It's good to have an idea of how you're going to do it. You need to map it out. Say you're given a job, and the boss tells you need to get this done by the end of this week. It's always good to organize, and organization is, in a way, creativity.
Yeah, we need a song. You're playing a tuba. Get a tuba. Make a song.
Exactly. Spend the time. All right, on this day, I'm going to familiarize myself with these keys. On this day, I'm going to try to create a tune with this key. On the second day, or on the third day, I'm going to create another tune so I can create a fugue, so that I can create some sort of song with the tuba.
And then on the seventh day, you rest.
No, that's good. Yeah, that's good. No, and I think you should rest after the third day. At least give yourself time. All right, well, I got the tunes. Now, how can I harmonize it?
No, I like where you're going, though. I like where you're going.
Cleese does make a point that we should not mistake creative people as indecisive, burdened with ambivalence, but they are more productive when they're not burdened with decisions. They're not burdened with the pressures and anxieties of deadlines. It creates discomfort, and comfort burdens creativity. Now, it is also important to note that in our own profession, sometimes we do not have the affordability to enjoy zero deadlines. In our jobs, we have deadlines. But like I said before, you can use creativity. You can be creative and organizing your deadlines, saying, okay, on this day, I'll get this much done, dedicate a certain amount of time with these tasks. So that way, by the end of the week, I can have everything done. Creativity is essential to strategy. In fact, Cleese explains and describes the forms of interruptions, which can cost you 8 minutes of returning to your creative states.
Ooh, I like this.
He describes interior and exterior interruptions. So he recognizes that you can be interrupted, and you should know what forms interruptions take. There are big and they are small, but he says that the biggest interruption is actually intrapersonal. Your own concerns of making a mistake, meaning your own uncertainty or worrying about making a mistake, is in itself the biggest interruption. For that reason, he reminds the reader, including your mindset, that mistakes don't exist, or rather, mistakes should be perceived as opportunities. Opportunity to explore something new. Opportunity to broaden your creative space. Opportunity to reformulate your current idea. And he suggests creating boundaries of space and time, to have a place where you can work uninterrupted, to set up a time where you won't be interrupted, a spatial and time-wise sanctum, your synagogue, your temple, your library. Now, again, when it comes to your own hobbies, find a place and find a time where you won't be interrupted.
It can be anywhere.
It can be anywhere. In fact, I go outside when I do my own work, when I have to type, or when I have to write, or when I have to organize. I always like going outside, and there's a spot under a tree where I do my work. Which brings me to, okay, we talked about why taking breaks is important for creativity, why not being interrupted is important for creativity, why it's okay to take your time, to be tortoise-minded. Nothing wrong if you're harebrained. Nothing wrong if you can think fast. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with taking your time when you're learning or when you're practicing. That being said, he emphasized also the importance of creativity. Now, John Cleese, at the end of the book, provides like a list of advice steps or strategies on how to exercise creativity. I recommend that you find this book in the library, or you can find it on Amazon and check it out for yourself, because I recommend that you look through it. I think you would want him to personally tell you how to follow those steps.
I can't wait.
Now, John Cleese provides historical examples of people who made discoveries following a time of being relaxed or in a meditative state, or in other words, taking a break. This allows your unconscious to give you hints on what you're missing in your creative process. That clarity is found with creativity. The most important point he makes about the tortoise and the hare is that they work well together. The tortoise mind will help you come up with ideas and clarify problems, and the hare helps you solving the problems and sorting them out logically. One can do with the other. You have one that helps you gather information, understand information in a creative way, and you have the other one who helps you execute it swiftly or within the necessities of time. The tortoise and the brain, the tortoise and the hare, in this case, don't think of them as opponents, but they're working together.
It's like a yin and yang tornado.
The slow and the quick. Not so much slow and steady wins the race, but slow and steady with the push of the quick realizes the race. Or on the other hand, there's no point of a race. That there's value in each one.
It's got to go back and forth.
Exactly. When you're taking a test, whether it's a state mandated test or a test for a license or whatnot, you need to be able to answer these many questions with this sort of amount of time. Don't be ashamed or embarrassed that it takes you a while to learn things. You shouldn't at all. I myself, it took me a long time to figure things out. I was tortoise brain through and through. I was the hare with my passions, but the things I did not understand it took me a while. And I don't mind that it took me a while, because how on earth am I going to understand something that I really don't understand its relevance? Which is, again, another thing. If you really want something to fit within your realm of creativity, let there be a meaning to be part of it. Whatever you're learning, make sure that there's some sort of relevance it has in your life.
Spice it up, huh?
Spice it up. Absolutely. And of course, take a break. In fact, you can plan it out for yourself. Spend some time reading and understanding. Take a break. Now, with the information that you've learned, reread it and create a scenario on how it will help you. Because if you can understand how to use the information, then you understand the information.
Oh, and when you're going into it all the time, every time you're going into it, check yourself what your state is, where you're coming from, so that you can start gauging that as well. To like, wait, how do I learn? Why was I boggled today, or why was I on? 2 cents from T.
No, I agree with you, T. If you actually take time and wonder what was your intentions in the first place.
Yeah, am I in a good state for learning and snapping to whatever it is you're getting with? As it's sometimes, if I feel like if I didn't know that, if I wasn't checking that out, I might not catch it early.
On the other hand, whether you catch it early, you catch it late. In the end,
it's still going to be great,
and as long as it stays in your mind.
Yeah.
And again, just like when you're practicing a language, if you learn a language and you do well with it, but then you don't practice it at all, you're going to forget it.
You got to get the flex.
You have to maintain that memory. If anything, using a creative mind, having a creative take to understand or to practice something will help solidify your familiarity of the content.
So if you want a sharp edge, check out the book. What's it called again?
Creativity.
Okay.
Yep, that's it. By John Cleese.
Cool.
I strongly recommend it. Give it a gander. Give it a look. Give it a peek. Give it a slight peruse. But again, if you really want to know John Cleese's advice on how to build up your creativity, how to
tune it up.
Yeah. Thank you. First, read through the beginning, but the last part of the book, he'll explain it all. However, you should just take a look through the beginning, or else you won't understand what he's getting to.
Okay. All right. And thank you, Che.
Thank you, T. Look forward for our next episode, which is going to come out in March.
Cool.
All right, episode number 3 on the social contrast. Thank you for listening.
All
Thank
right.
you, T.